Hi, Liz. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Good, good. It's so good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's wonderful. Thank you for your time. It's a pleasure having you here at the show. We've been discussing quite a while, and I know you're one of the expert in e-commerce. Spanning 20 years of experience, doing variety of things. You saw a lot of implementation, a lot of successes, and a lot of failures. So please share with the audience, who you are, what your expertise, and what are you working on these days.
Sure. So I run an e-commerce and live shopping agency. I've spent 20 years in the e-commerce space. The biggest industries that I focus on are health and beauty, fashion and accessories, food and beverage, a little bit of media, a little bit of finance. But part of the reason is that we don't focus on a specific industry is because most of the problems are the same, right? Everybody wants to increase lifetime value,
Hmm.
average order size, work on retention. But we also have a live shopping arm within our company. So we focus on things like content development, platform selection, platform integration, hosting behind the camera, not in front of the camera, as
Okay.
well as the post-mortem. But in terms of the agency, we focus on e-com strategy, subscription, loyalty, basically making sure people don't leave money on the table.
Yes, yes.
And
But I really interested to know you better and what's your story? Everyone has a story. So what got you into the e-commerce space?
oh, probably shopping. But yeah, in general, I mean, I started out in the media industry and media entertainment, and there was a lot
Uh-huh.
of product going on there. So I started out with subscriptions on product, and that's sort of like whet my appetite for it. And when I originally focused in media, while it was focused on the e-commerce aspect, I saw what was happening in the media industry, and it wasn't moving as fast as it had been. Like for a long time, it was driven by a lot of the new technologies.
Yeah.
And e-commerce as itself, you started to see what was happening with like AI and machine learning. I'm talking like a number of years ago. I know AI
Hmm.
is like the new buzzword, but like let's face
Yeah.
it was there a number of years ago. So with regard to AI, I started to look at that and like all the database marketing and CRM today, but it was called database marketing back then.
Hmm.
And I thought it was really exciting where the e-commerce industry was going because it reminded me back in the heyday of media about like with all these new technologies and driving it from the consumer standpoint. So that's sort of, I went from the subscription, into that, like started to focus more and more on the actual merchandising of items. So,
Yes, yes. I think we share the same background, right? So I'm also, started my career in the media and entertainment sector, and
yeah,
right, and this is was an amazing area of growth. We always thought and discussed when commerce will merge with media, right, and entertainment. So currently, we see that content providers are becoming, you know, e-commerce players, and e-commerce players are becoming content players, right? So there is a merge of entertainment
right.
and commerce, and it's kind of now probably 2024 is going to be like a major year for the integration of these domains, right? This is also things that your experience from your end.
Yeah. So I like, I am a huge fan of the integration of content and commerce. I've
Yeah.
always been a major supporter of this, way
Hmm.
back when I was working in media entertainment on the television. I never understood why when we're watching like a cooking show that they weren't merchandising like, oh, Emero could sell his knives or his pans or something like that.
Hmm.
And there was a real separation of like, church and state at that point. Like you weren't allowed to do those types of things. But from an online perspective, it made more sense. And I always talked about it as, if you watched any of like the news networks, you had the content on commerce, the content on content overlay, right?
Yes.
And then you had like the QVCs of the world with the commerce on
Hmm.
commerce overlay. And I'm
Hmm.
like, but why wouldn't you have the content and commerce? Like you have both of those overlays and they weren't doing
Yes.
it from like the television. This is like where it started, right? It wasn't quite internet yet.
Yes.
And then on the internet, you're like, well, okay, this makes sense. You're already doing it from an advertising perspective. Like it's all on the same screen. Why not
Hmm.
move to the commerce? So, but I think now, why not? I think commerce is really about storytelling in a lot of ways, right? But it's also the solution. And if people don't understand those links, like I don't think you could just throw out a product and not give context around it. This is the big piece for me. It's the
Okay.
reason why content and commerce have to merge. There
Mm-hmm.
has to be context, particularly, less so for other audiences, definitely for American audiences. Like it depends on where you are in the globe. But
Mm-hmm.
American audiences absolutely need context.
Yes. So you see on mobile, I think it's specifically on this subject, right? We need to differentiate probably between big screens and mobile
Yeah.
screens, right? So you see TikTok as an entertainment, initially as an entertainment platform, then as a search platform, now as a shopping platform, trying to push, US consumers to purchase
Right.
via shoppable video. On the other hand, you see Netflix, Disney, Amazon Prime, trying to leverage retail media and sell
Right.
inventory of advertising. How do you differentiate between those two? I guess it's like a totally different experiences also in terms of the purchasing
So
journey.
I know, I know this is going to sound controversial because a lot of people are really bullish on TikTok, but for me, um, I don't see it yet. I'm not saying they don't have the eyeballs, and I'm not saying they're not going to figure it out. My problem with it is that it's a discovery platform, right? It was built for discovery. And even if it's product discovery, we don't have the same experience as, say, a standalone live shopping
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
experience, right? Because those were built with e-commerce in mind. TikTok was not built that way. So they're layering it on top. It's one of the
Mm-hmm.
reasons that, a lot of the other social media platforms have failed with regard to it. It is not a great experience. It is not that same seamless experience.
Yes.
Will TikTok figure it out? I mean, they have a lot of dollars, so I'm not saying they're not going to figure it out right now. I don't think they're quite there. They're leaning on a lot of folks who are outside of the company to help bring value to their
Mm-hmm.
consumers. So I don't think it's there yet. I have a theory that at some point in time they may acquire someone like one of the live shopping platforms integrated in. That's
Okay.
that's what I think. But it is different versus, we look at the live shopping platforms at, the standalone. They were built with e-commerce in mind, and they are built with the content, commerce, and community all on the
Yes.
same screen at the same time, which is a very different experience than if you go on a social media platform, mostly because, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with mobile. Most people are using it on mobile. The screen size is a little bit of, there's a little bit of limitation there, but also
Yes.
because they don't have that back end. They don't have that back end piece, right, of e-commerce. You have to send them elsewhere. That's
Yes. Exactly. And I think we need to differentiate in this context between live shopping events, which is a certain type of an event, to a short form vertical videos, 30 seconds, 60 seconds. I think on the shoppable video, vertical videos, I think we see an
right.
explosive growth, right, of content creation, creativity, conversion are increasing, ROAS are improving. Live shopping is something totally different, right? Maybe like a longer form type of an event, maybe more
Right, right.
polished, right? Initiated by probably the brands. So let's talk about the live shopping aspect, and probably what do you see is working today in the industry with live shopping? Whether and I'm just referring to
Okay.
things like who which host to select, who should run the event, how do you build up towards the event? What are some of the best practices that you see in successful live shopping events?
So we're talking about live shopping, actual like long
Yes,
form at this point.
yes,
Okay.
yes, correct.
Just to be clear. So I think first and foremost, again, because American audiences, well, in general, I think people need more context, right?
Hmm.
I always say, like in China, because they're used to just, product after product after product. That is not
Yes.
what's here. Elsewhere, um, other communities need the context. So if we're thinking about that, first and foremost is like, what are your goals, right? Is it sales? Is it brand engagement? Are we doing email capture? Like, what are the goals? And then
Hmm.
thinking about what are content themes that we might work around.
Okay.
And, for example, it is winter now here where I am in New York. We just got a major snowstorm. So, we're thinking about winter, and we're thinking about maybe 5 ways to weather, winter skin. It might
Hmm.
be it's February, today is Valentine's Day, maybe it's about something about heart health. It's what could you do either from a calendar basis or something that would make sense for your brand and build a program around it. You know, what are other products that might have, be adjacent, either your own or collaborations, bring
Mm-hmm.
those in. That's like on the content piece. In terms of, the platform piece, it's always, I mean, as well as I do, and you have a wonderful platform, but all the platforms have different, features and functionality. And is your team technical? Is your team not technical? How many
Mm-hmm.
people do you have running it? So, besides, there's a few like different bells and whistles with the different platforms. But then when we talk about the event itself, the event is an event like any other. It needs to be marketed to. I get asked this question all the time. They're like, "Oh, so how do people find our event?" I'm like, "How would they find any other event?"
An event.
So
Yeah.
yeah, you need to market it. Like, it needs to go out,
Yeah.
on your, emails. Like, if you have stores, promote it in your stores. Like, put something in their
Mm-hmm.
bag when they leave, on your socials, etc., across your site. These are all the places like you need to market it. You need to tee it up. It's great if you can have some sort of RSVP system, remind people right before an event starts. Some of
Mm-hmm.
the platforms have that built in, others don't, that you need to do on your own, like Klaviyo, Omnisend, etc. That's really important. When you think about who's hosting, I get asked this question all the time about influencers versus not. So it depends on what your goal is. If your goal is brand awareness, yes, by all means, go ahead, go to an influencer. However, I've talked to a lot of the different platforms. A lot of the platforms have said the influencers don't perform as well from a conversion standpoint, which we know in general
Mm-hmm.
because we don't go to influencers for conversion in general when we do social media campaigns. We know that's not what it's about. And this is
Great.
why the networks don't guarantee conversion, they guarantee impressions. So there's a
Mm-hmm.
difference. The reason I'm such a huge advocate of going, back to brand, like, who are your employees? Like, are they, if they're passionate and can go in front of the camera, and not because they're beautiful. The point is, everyone who tunes in wants to know whether or not, that person can answer their questions. That's really what it's about. So they're not looking at like what that person looks like. They're
Okay.
saying, hey, I need to know whether this skin cream is going to work for me,
Yes.
specifically me, not a demographic, not a psychographic, me. And
And
so I
now
want
they
a
need to know it
person,
now. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's so important. It's so important. So like, or any of your brand evangelists, you have like a fan base who you can bring up like on the screen, etc. Like, those are people who are going to help from a sales standpoint. And it's
Mm-hmm.
also good, I think a lot of people don't necessarily think about the postmortem. What happens after the event? Did people miss the replay? Was there an item they looked at during the event? Can you remarket that item to them? Can you,
Yes.
send the replay? What do you do with that? Can you have a replay on your site to help get other people who might have missed the event? So all of that is really important as well from a best
Mm-hmm.
practice. And I always say to people, it's not one and done. You have to do a number of these, see what resonates with your audience. Different themes may resonate, different formats may resonate. You have to do a few, you have to constantly tweak. So, maybe 10 minutes is your sweet spot. For other people, that may be 20. Maybe collaborations work better for your brand. Like, you have to play with it. So
Mm-hmm.
you can't judge this based off of one. But I always say, what's the worst that happens? You have great content you can clip down, put on your socials, put across your
Yeah.
site, product pages. That's the
Mm-hmm.
worst that can happen. That's the
Yes.
worst, which is still pretty good. So
Yes. Okay, great. So, Liz, thank you for this valuable information about live shopping. I know a lot of brands are trying. There are also variety of production, scripting, challenges out there. But definitely the strategy and the implementation and the build up to the event should be also more being planned professionally. Also, the product should have like interesting promotion element, like a discount or some like an
yeah,
introduction, or it's a mix of a lot of things. I believe it should be in the strategy of any brand, but again, together with short form videos, which is obviously anyone is doing these days, you're trying to promote. And I like the
right.
distinction between, as you said, influencers are good for impression, impressions, and brand owners or brand advocates are very, very good for conversion. So that's a very, 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 very nice summary of this topic. I want to go back to the e-commerce side of
Yeah.
things, right? I know you've been doing this for many, many years, and you have a perspective of how things are evolving. What do you see now in the market in terms of brands trying to scale up in their businesses, improve processes, supply chains, back end, front end? What are the major challenges you see brands are facing these days?
I think, I mean, the major change that we're seeing is with AI and how people are using AI.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so even though it's been around for a little bit, where I'm really seeing it happen now is people are using it for product imagery. I mean, this is like fantastic to do, like where you can create, like, say you're a food brand, you can create pictures for your recipes.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, or change some of the product imagery, like the backgrounds you wanted at a beach or along those lines. I mean, this is really fantastic. So I do love it for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I see people using it for ideation. I think the other thing that I would say that is really important now is I'm finally seeing more and more people starting to go into like their customer logs to see, like, yes, they're looking at data and they're looking at conversion, but they're not looking at what's coming in, like what are the complaints,
Mm-hmm.
what are the questions that they're getting over and over again. Because again, I always, one of the things that is like my biggest pet peeve is when people put major product attributes in the FAQs. If you are going to the FAQs, you do not do a good job of describing your product and
Okay.
how it's going to be a
Yeah.
solution for me. Like that is
Yeah.
that's such a
Mm-hmm.
bad way to go. But I see that happen all the time. But you need to be checking out, like, what do customers need? What are they looking for? What are they not finding? Like they may tell you, say you're a clothing manufacturer and you don't have plus size
Mm-hmm.
or something. And plus size people are continually asking, say, I love your stuff. I wish you had bigger sizes. There's a market opportunity for you. Are you paying attention
Yes.
to that? Are you
Mm-hmm.
paying attention to the wording customers are using? How are you reflecting that messaging on your website? I don't think there's enough of that being done. I think
Okay.
they're looking strictly at their, like, Shopify analytics and what are the conversions and who's doing cart abandonment. Is like, okay, but maybe we can, improve some of those numbers. It's not all technical, right? It's not all a technical piece. Like maybe everything functions beautifully on your site.
Mm-hmm.
But like if you're not having the right marketing message there because they can't find what they need, either your stuff is hard to find, doesn't use the right language, isn't illuminating the solution for them,
Okay.
or attach, or evoking an emotional need, like if it's an emotional type of purchase,
Mm-hmm.
that's a problem. So like that's why I think it's really important to look at uh, customer feeds, like where is that coming in across your socials, across like the questions, the customer service, etc.
Yes. So everything that you just mentioned is we can wrap it up in under the title of, let's say, optimization, customer journeys. I mean, it's also involved the
Yeah.
content, right? You also get involved in all these decisions. As Lisa's strategy. I mean, going to the defining customer journeys, content, optimization, obviously, of website.
Yeah, UX and UI is so important. And that journey, I
Mm-hmm.
think, where I see people fall down all the time is getting cute with their navigation, um, putting in words that aren't, natural, saying things like shop when really that doesn't help you from an SEO standpoint, right? So
Yeah.
um, we see that error all the time. Or even just on the hero image, they have a tagline and it's really, if you know, you know. And so what if I'm uninitiated to the brand? I don't know what you do. And I
Mm-hmm.
always tell people, I'm like, think of the paths that people have before they come to your site, right? Like they're coming to either purchase directly because they know you, they've been there before, they have,
Okay.
they are doing research because they just found out about you. So you need to tell them. So like if I'm in that second bucket, right? um,
Mm-hmm.
are you making it clear what you do and what you sell and what your benefits are? Like, you know, that hero image needs to orient me when I'm
Yeah.
hitting your site, right? So, and then like the last piece would be like, is it a customer service issue in some way, shape, or form? And are those paths clear? Um, but I think, you and I had talked about this before. And one of the things that I see all the time is people want to have these really beautiful sites, and not that you shouldn't, you should have a beautiful site and
Mm-hmm.
inviting. The challenge is that a lot of times that comes at the cost of conversion. So needs to be a happy medium. I see it more often with fashion and beauty because there's an aesthetic that they want to communicate.
Hmm.
But a lot of times it's compromising the conversion, right? If we want to have everything on the site like the same color, then we don't have our call to action buttons looking different where it's calling me to action. Like that's the
Yes.
point. It's supposed to stand out.
Yes.
So I see this conflict all the time with those industries, not with everyone, but a lot of like it happens, or we're having beautiful images, beautiful
Hmm.
imagery, but like, okay, what is it you sell? I'm not sure. I'm not
Okay.
sure. So I think
Interesting.
those are
Yep.
really important from the customer journey. I have to understand like what it is I'm buying.
Yes. And currently in the situation these days in the market, do you see like new buildups? Do you see like again optimization or revamp of existing platform? Where is the focus from your perspective?
Yeah, well, I think for the smaller brands, they had started on other platforms and there's such a migration to Shopify. I mean, it's literally, I would say
Okay.
90% of the migration like moved over to
Wow.
Shopify with
Really?
regard to that we're getting. I'm not saying those are the stats in the
Yes.
market,
Yes. Yes.
but we've seen a lot. Like everybody has moved off mainly because, it's sort of like the Android versus the iOS. Everybody builds for Shopify first, so there's
Hmm.
more marketing tools. It's really the flexibility. It ultimately comes down to marketing. Most of the people come
Okay.
down to marketing, and also I think as you advance your business, like you want more e-commerce based tools. Like people came up Wix or Squarespace. Those aren't
Hmm.
e-commerce platform. Shopify's an e-commerce platform. I don't have anybody moving like from Shopify to Woo or anything like that. Like we've had
Okay.
Woo to Shopify, and Magento to Shopify. Like we've had
Hmm.
more of those moves. Literally, it's been like 90% to Shopify, um,
Interesting.
which is interesting. What's happening in the marketplace. But they are a major player and have there's so many apps. I think that's it. I think people are drawn with the apps and
Yes.
the capabilities,
Yes.
for sure.
Is it good
Um,
for agencies or is it bad for agencies? What do you think?
In terms of what? In terms of
An overall business, right? It traditionally, you would have taken something that the brands themselves could not do. Now Shopify is so democratization of the e-commerce, right? So, by the way,
yes and
Shopify in the
no.
latest announcement said that all the agencies are like their number one priorities, and they are like strategic for Shopify business in the next 5 years. Because Shopify just announced, a lot of new um, platform, both for B2B, enterprise, marketplace. So it's quite
Yeah.
there are more deep integration for that. But for that straightforward, brand, maybe up to Shopify Advance or so. How do you see the business evolving on the agency side?
So the interesting thing is like, they kind of tout the platform as being this DIY.
Yeah.
That's not really true. I mean,
Okay.
you can't get away with doing a lot of this stuff without a developer. So if you have some developing skills, that's true. But, these are templates that people are working with. And if you want any sort of custom, a lot of times you can't get exactly what you want without some custom
Hmm.
coding. So like who's
Sure.
doing that custom coding? I
Yes.
mean, I've done like, like hundreds and hundreds of sites. Like I
Hmm.
can't do everything. I need my developers. Like I'm not a developer myself. I know my way
Yes.
around Shopify for sure, but
Hmm.
I know when I have to go to my team and say, "Hey, I want these buttons." Like for example, I'll give you a perfect example of something that people wouldn't
Okay.
be able to do, and it drives me nuts. Um, so say you have products and they have different lengths in the names, right? So the price like maybe goes right below everything. But if you
Hmm.
have different lengths of names, if one has one line and one has two lines, now your buttons, like your add to cart buttons, are not aligned, right? Your add to
Hmm.
cart buttons are going to be like this because one is
Yes.
one line and one is two lines. Drives me nuts. I hate the way that looks. I think it makes it look really sloppy. There is
Yeah.
no way for you to adjust that if you don't know coding. There is no way.
Yeah.
So, like, these are little things like that I'm saying, like these little custom tweaks that you want to do that just
Hmm.
like, again, I'm all about removing the friction across the site wherever you possibly can.
Sure.
And to me, that's like just a sloppy site. It makes it look sloppier. It slows us down. So those are the things. So from an agency perspective, I don't think we're going away anytime soon, personally, because I think a lot of it is more intricate that needs to be done. And also from the ecom strategy side, they still need guidance on that. It depends. Like if they start bringing all of that in-house, sure. But
Hmm.
I think there's always need for objective firms, right? That you're not only selling them the same product all the time. Are there things that are outside the Shopify realm that might make more
Yeah.
sense? Yes. So I
Yes.
still think
Yes.
we have some longevity. I'll
No,
retire
no,
before
of course.
they take over. No, I'm kidding.
Okay. But I mean,
So
transformation, improvement of
yeah,
processes, innovation is always good, right? So in any type of environment. And I want to talk to you about subscription. I know it's
yeah,
one of the hottest topics. A lot of brands running for subscription, maybe running too fast. And you have a lot of experience around these implementation. So
yeah.
I would love to have your thoughts on, what's working today and what's not.
Sure. So yeah, I have 20 years now in subscription, so it's a
Yeah.
long time. Like, I cut my teeth on subscription, like when I started
Yeah.
my career. So I know the space really, really well. And one of the biggest things I see now is it does make sense for people to do subscriptions if you have a product that needs to regularly be restocked. So I see more and more people doing it because Shopify does have a whole bunch of apps, that,
Hmm.
oh, we can do a subscription and set it up. The challenge is though they haven't thought through the strategy, right? So we have it up, but in order for you to have a successful subscription business, you need to think about, okay, well, what's our churn, right? And how do we support the business so we don't have that churn?
Hmm.
So is that onboarding process correct? Like, do people understand what they need to do, where they need to go, how they change, like, say, the frequency of their order or the size of their order, or can they swap items? How clear is that? Are they oriented from the get-go? Like, are you sending them an onboarding email? What are you doing to nurture them in between? Particularly if you're a more expensive item where maybe
Hmm.
I will not be purchasing month to month. How are you nurturing them? So, like, do
Yes.
you have, an email drip sequence? Do you occasionally send, notes to certain people based on types of products that they purchased,
Hmm.
letting them know maybe when things are back in stock, not for an out of stock, but for example, if you have seasonal items and now you want to let those people know. What I see is people are just throwing it up there and they're
Uh-huh.
letting it go. And all they're paying attention to is, like, is recurring revenue coming in? And or is there cart abandonment, or did someone cancel, but not really looking into the reasons why. And also what happens on the customer service side, right? And
Yeah.
do you need to adjust or tweak something on the customer service side because maybe the pack sizes you picked don't make sense, that people are continually having issues, or it's coming too fast. Like if you're getting a lot of cancellations, or you have a lot of people who are changing
Hmm.
their frequency to further out, maybe your pack sizes aren't correct. So, like, this is what I'm saying. I think they're just throwing it up there and they're like, oh yeah, okay, we get recurring revenue, and like
Uh-huh.
there's so much more to it.
Yes.
um so this is where I see people falling down on this today.
Hmm. Hmm. And what are your thoughts? I mean, in terms of implementation, or for I'm talking about D2C versus B2B, right? So
On
obviously,
subscription.
yes. I mean, there is any differences? Obviously, there are, but what is your experience?
um I think in terms of implementation, I will say inevitably when we've had customers try to set it up themselves, they've come to us and said, we can't get this to go quite right. They're
Yeah.
not super easy. And this is what I'm saying again. It's less in this case about having a developer, although there are tweaks you're going to want to probably make to a lot of their
Sure.
the templates that they have.
Hmm.
What I see, where I see people having problem, is understanding, you know, do we let them flip from monthly to one time? What does that look like? The setups are a little bit intricate. Like if you don't
Hmm.
know them, um, I hear people all the time. It doesn't matter what platform. It's not the way the platform set them up. They're complex. You have to think about it. There's logic
Yes.
that's involved with these things.
Hmm.
So that's a little hard. On the I think it's pretty similar on D2C versus B2B. I think it's just
Yes.
the difference of, um, well, obviously you have different sizes that are going out, different frequencies potentially, but it's also how are you marketing to them? The marketing, letting them know what's in, like it may
Yes.
be based on like their email that goes out to them is like, hey, do you want to reorder? Right?
Hmm.
Everything.
Yeah.
So like there's the marketing is different, right? Because hopefully your
Okay.
B2B client is ordering monthly and you want to make sure that they're going back and ordering like that entire list monthly. So, but I think from an implementation, it's pretty similar. We
Yes.
get a lot of calls about subscriptions, even if like
Okay.
we came in after the fact that they had installed a subscription. They're
Hmm.
like, "Hey, can you look at this because this doesn't look right?" So, like it happens. It happens a lot. It's not as I wish they were easier. They're not. They're not.
Yeah. And in general, about B2B, I mean, how do you assess this opportunity right now? We know it's getting huge, right? Bigger and bigger.
For a subscription
No, no,
or
in
in
general, in general, in general. Yeah.
well, it's funny because we were talking about live shopping earlier. I think one
Yeah.
of the biggest areas of inquiry we get right now is with live shopping for B2B and
Okay.
not on D2C. And I think there's a reason for that. I think the reason is because they are viewing it as a sales tool and D2C views it as a marketing tool. And
Hmm.
so if you think of the B2B side, because they could use it for let's go out to wholesale, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to get on a plane. We can now market all of our items to a bunch of buyers at the same time, right? If we want to do the
Hmm.
one to many. Many of the platforms have the one to one, so they could just do it there and purchase directly. But having all of that on the same screen at the same time, it's like taking a purchase order, right? Like we're
Hmm.
getting rid of
Hmm.
the purchase
Hmm.
order and putting it right in. So it's very compelling to them because and they can account for it because it's a selling tool. It's a little bit of an easier sell than it is on the marketing side where live shopping is a newer channel. It's sitting in experimental dollars. It doesn't have
Yes.
its own, you know, it's not like social media where there's a budget for it, a dedicated budget. It's still kind of people are playing
Yes.
with it. So, but it's
Interesting.
interesting. Like
Yes.
I'm seeing like
Yes.
even industries as wide as like insurance. I mean, you're thinking,
Really?
that's not like yeah,
Wow.
because they're looking at it as because we know the call to action doesn't have to be you know um shopping, but it's something transaction based. So what's transactional for them? Download a white paper,
Okay.
book an appointment,
Hmm.
you know give us your email address and you get XYZ, whatever the case is. So they could use it as more like a conference, informing, get more information, and then, push people to um, either appointments to physical brick and mortar, depending what it is. So I'm seeing more clients either use it from a wholesale, sending it
Hmm.
wholesale, or industries that like more like the insurance where they're like, hey, we could use it in a
Wow.
different sense. Yeah.
Interesting.
It's
And I think B2B are using live shopping not only for, as you say, for immediate conversion, but also for training, education, customer support, variety of other use cases.
Yeah, they're using it a lot of different ways. Like, because in a way, I feel like the live shopping is a misnomer because it's really like it's something transactional in some
Hmm.
way, right? With content as the core. So,
Yeah.
what is if the training is like, okay, get this information, right? The content is there. Like, people are using it like I always say that it's like a Zoom with better content and a commerce component,
Yeah.
like in a transactional component, right? Like so,
Yeah.
but it is because you can have right. We have the chat function. If you think about Zoom, right? We're talking to one another,
Yeah.
right? So that's the content. But again, this would be like elevated, and then you
Hmm.
have the community where they can talk directly to us or they talk to one another. Same
Yes.
piece. The
Hmm.
only the only other aspect that we're adding in would be something transactional like do this, get this,
Hmm.
right? Whatever. So
Yes.
it's very similar. Like that's I usually use the Zoom example better than the QVC because
Okay.
to me QVC is kind of like Blockbuster or
Yeah.
Zagat, where they should have been the leader in the field and they're not. They're trailing. Um, and I have a lot of respect for QVC because they opened up this whole space, but I
Yes.
really thought that they would have been one of the first ones out there to do this.
Yeah. And they are
Yeah.
still strong. It's getting stronger and stronger. It's unbelievable, their financials and performance. I
Yeah,
guess there
they
is a
are,
market
but
for that. Yeah.
it's a different demographic. It's definitely a different demographic because, when you look at like Gen Z, is Gen Z going there? Like they're not
Hmm.
spending a lot of
No,
time
of course not.
like
No,
Yeah, that's not where they're
it's a
spending their
different
time.
demographics altogether, of course, completely
Right.
different.
But, you have to evolve for the times, right? You have to meet people on the platforms that they prefer.
Yes.
And when you look at Gen Z, you look at Gen Alpha. I mean, my kids are Gen Alpha. They don't even know what the heck, appointment viewing television is. The other day we were watching something and a commercial came on, and my kid was like, "What is that?" I said, "Oh, it's a commercial." And she's like, "What's a commercial?" Like, she didn't know what a commercial is. She's
Yeah.
8 years old. And I said, like, you get them like when you're watching like your iPad. And she goes, "Oh, you mean an ad?" Like, she didn't know the
Okay.
difference between like what a commercial and like what an ad was like popping up on YouTube. But like, she had never heard the word commercial before.
Nice. Yeah.
So, this is
No,
what
yeah.
this is what we're talking about. These are people, these are the cord nevers, right? Like, they're not cord cutters.
Hmm.
These are people who've never been on live
Yep.
TV, an
Yep.
appointment viewing television, right? They haven't.
Hmm.
Everything is VOD for them. So, if that's the case, like, how do you cater to that audience, right? Like, how do you have to be on different platforms.
Yes.
So,
Interesting.
yeah.
Liz, how do you see the market evolving, the e-commerce space, in the next few years? Some of the key trends that you see.
So, I am not bullish on metaverse. I know that was like the
Okay.
big thing. Like, this year is the AI talk. Like, what was it? Like 2 years ago, it was the metaverse talk.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, I think we have a long way to go on that. Most people I know don't know what a wallet is, where to get it, or anything along those lines.
Yeah.
I don't think it's there. The usability, unless you're a gamer or you grew up like my kids, like, we don't know how to navigate um, the metaverse. I just
Hmm.
think that one's harder. Personally, I'm more bullish on things like, AR, VR
Okay.
becoming more commonplace, digital
Hmm.
storefronts. I do think, we'll probably move into like digital malls and things along those lines where people can search. There's some really beautiful digital stores out there. One of the ones I love is Obsess, the brand Obsess. I think they are doing such a fantastic job.
Yes.
Yeah, if you've ever seen their virtual stores.
Yes.
Um,
I mean, more
so
immersive experiences. Yes.
yeah, I do
Hmm.
think that's there. And at some point, will it evolve to like a VR? Sure. Is it tomorrow or the next 5 years? Not necessarily, but I do think more and more experiences will probably go online. Um, but not totally online. I don't believe, like, I still think people want, some connection. And
Yep.
like, even the younger audiences, I know like they're very much in their phone and things like that, but they do crave it. I mean, we saw that during COVID, right? Like, they suffered the most because they didn't have the social interaction. So
Yes.
I
Yes.
don't think that's going away. I know there was like big talk of that for a while. I don't think that's the case. But yeah, but in terms of, e-commerce, I do think people are going to look into more. Certainly the shoppable video, why not? It's so easy. They're already
Yep.
generating the video. I think
Hmm.
it's a no-brainer, the shoppable video, for everyone to move towards.
Yep.
Um, yeah. And then I would say, I think more video. Like, I keep telling all my clients today, less text. Everything that they have on the site, I'm like, you got to take it down. How much text is there? It's all
Hmm.
going to be about image and video. I mean, look at people's social media feeds now. It's almost like completely video, completely video.
Yeah.
Very few images anymore. And so, like, that's where it's going because it tells a story, right? It's way more production. Like, I
Hmm.
mean, I
Yes.
get it. It's hard. It's really hard. And I feel bad for all those like social teams because it's so, I mean, think about it. A few years ago, you used to be able to get away with a beautiful image. Now there's so
Hmm.
much more that has to go behind it, like creating those videos or GIFs or whatever you want to do. I mean,
Yeah.
so I don't touch that stuff, but I feel for those people. Man, that's a hard job. That's a hard
Yeah.
job. Yeah.
Wow, Liz, thank you so much. It was so helpful. Thank you for all the experience, passion for the industry. Anything else you want to add?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I think mostly I want to just tell people, if you haven't looked at your site in a while, either you do it or you have someone who hasn't touched your site and have them
Hmm.
walk through in front of you and see where they're having trouble. Because I think so, like, we're so invested in our own sites and we've seen it. Like, you don't see stuff anymore. There might be a spot on the wall in your house and you don't
Mm-hmm.
see it because like it's just been there for so long. And the fact is, like if you have someone else go through it, like you need to see your site with new eyes. And I think
Yes.
that's where you're going to see a lot of those UX UI issues that you're not running into. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
I would just like, please don't leave money on the table, please. You know.
Yes. Yes. Don't leave money, increase AOVs. There are plenty of things that can be optimized.
Yes. Yes.
Liz, where is the best place for people to find you?
Sure. So they can find me on LinkedIn. So it's Elizabeth Kressel.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, my company is Lizard Strategy. So lizardstrategy.com.
Great. And we put all the information in the show notes. Again, Liz, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure to hosting you here.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Bye bye. See you soon.
Bye.